Continuing the connection between the collection and the landscape, we begin today's TED's Talk and Walk at Spring Valley Library. Spring Valley Library is a joint use facility on the campus of Mayer High School. Additionally, Yavapai College is one of our partners. So, with all this educational energy floating around, I've created a trifold brochure highlighting a few of the resources available through the Yavapai Library Network and beyond. This document can be downloaded, and I'll mention a couple of specific titles shortly. Today, we are taking Interstate 17 south of State Highway 69 in Cortez Junction, some 7 miles to Badger Springs Road. Take this road a couple of miles east of the freeway, past an information kiosk and restroom, to a small parking lot. Other access routes to the 71,000-acre Agua Fria National Monument may be gained via a variety of primitive roads, such as the one to Bloody Basin. Today's hike is in the winter, so the landscape between 3,100 and 3,200 feet in elevation is a little bleak. Nevertheless, the path is clear and views wide open. We are hiking to a pueblo in Baby Canyon via a four-wheel drive road northeast to a ridge, offering views east to mesas, canyons, and the Agua Fria River. As you survey the landscape, imagine life here 24/7, 365. The following resources will help put your thoughts into the right perspective. From the library, The Archaeology of Perry Mesa and Its World by David Wilcox and Jim Holman. Online titles from our trifold, Agua Fria National Monument, managed by the Bureau of Land Management, Friends of Agua Fria National Monument, a document, Coordinated Resource Management for Arizona's Perry Mesa, and School of Human Evolution at Arizona State University. Hiking up the four-wheel drive road northeast, we arrive at the ridge and drop down into a small arroyo via a primitive game trail. We pass some cattle grazing near the Agua Fria River channel. The impact of livestock on this area is ongoing. It changed the landscape significantly during the late 1800s, so it is difficult to understand how folks in the Perry Mesa culture lived between 1000 and 1500 AD based on what we see here now. The landscape distinctions between now and 600 years ago do not resemble each other much for this and other reasons, such as the much wetter climate back then. Entering the Agua Fria River channel, the first thing to look for is evidence of high water. These riparian environments are disturbance-prone environments. Leaves, twigs, and other debris get caught in the branches of trees growing in the channel. Also, log jams may be observed some distance from where the water is flowing today. Translation: a lot of water has flowed through this channel in the not-too-distant past, and just because we are in a drought at the moment, resulting in very little water being found in the channel, that could change quickly. As I stated earlier, no developed trails exist in the Agua Fria National Monument. Therefore, cross-country hiking is the norm, meaning you must be sure-footed to hike along any of the stream beds or hillsides adjacent to these serpentine cuts in the landscape. Since the water level now is down, crossing the stream channel is easy. If any significant amount of water is flowing, crossing the channel or even hiking alongside it can be quite challenging. Be prepared. Sometimes it pays to state the obvious. The stream channels cutting through these mesas is where the water is, but the people were atop the mesas. Did they haul water from bottom to top every day? Did they rely on cisterns atop the mesas for immediate needs? Notice too that agricultural work was not performed along the stream channels, as was the case in other communities along the Verde River and environs. The stream channels here are narrow and flood prone, hence the wetter climate hundreds of years ago enabled them to grow some crops like agave atop the mesas. For today's hikers exploring the area, the prevalence of riparian trees signals the availability and reliability of water along the stream channels. These signs of water are visible from some distance. Can you read the signs of the times? The water may or may not be on the surface, but it is not far away. Sometimes just below the surface, and other times on the surface around the next bend in the channel. Cottonwood, willow, and sycamore trees are visible from some distance and provide reliable pointers to this moisture. On a recent hike in a wetter year, I stumbled upon a population of azolla, an uncommon water fern covering the surface of a pond in the channel. Keep your eyes open. The first side canyon coming in from the right is Baby Canyon. That's the route we will take to Baby Canyon Pueblo. But before going further, notice the rock art at this confluence. Rock art like this can be found anywhere across the landscape in the monument. Evidence like this of the ancient civilization, as well as the rare occurrence of endemic species tied to the desert watershed, such as the Gila chub, factored heavily in the establishment of the monument in the last days of the Clinton administration. As stated in the trifold, leave all evidence of previous inhabitants alone, along with the plants and animals now living here. From the confluence, we hike south and east along the sandy and rock-strewn stream channel. The way is fairly easy and straightforward compared to hiking along the hillsides. Take note of useful food plants such as juniper, prickly pear cactus, and algerita. The latter two provide important elements of my edible landscape in Cortez Junction, just like my neighbors from the Perry Mesa culture, those centuries apart. Notice too, plants specific to certain microclimates, such as catclaw on the hotter, drier hillsides, and desert broom found only along the stream channels. Notice too the coarse soils and consider how that impacts plant life and how it may have affected those of the Perry Mesa culture as they sought to farm and build homes. Soon, Baby Canyon Pueblo comes into view. Hiking up the west side of the hill leading to Baby Canyon Pueblo, pieces of pottery become more common. Perhaps this was their trash dump, throwing away broken pots over the side of the hill below their home. Looking back over our route, we get a different perspective on what it looked like as visitors approached their home. Rock art will be seen on the walls approaching the top of the mesa. What is the message conveyed in this ancient rock art? Imagine the effort it took to chip these images into the rock surface. Their civilization must have achieved a certain level of safety and security for them to have had enough leisure time to communicate in this fashion. Approaching the top of the Pueblo, some scrambling will be necessary. Did the animals they draw represent a sample of game common at the time, such as bighorn, antelope, or elk? Did these pictures represent wishful thinking or bragging rights like the big fish that got away? Once atop the mesa, the wall structure of this Pueblo is laid out before our eyes. You can see how walls were joined and how open the rooms were to the sky. Was this Pueblo a site where they could get a better view of the stars as they tried to discern the signs of their own times? The fortress-like structure of this Pueblo, along with many others in the Perry Mesa culture, enabled defense and a good view of their surroundings. How many people may have shared each room? How many people lived in this community at one time? Were they permanent residents, or were they temporary visitors seeking to escape the desert heat in the summer? As we survey the scene from the Pueblo, it is the same scene they saw hundreds of years ago. But what else did they see? Antelope, elk, and bighorn herds frolicking in the distance? What concerns did they have as workers or parents? Did they worry about showing up for work on time? Were they concerned about children falling off a cliff, or being bitten by a rattlesnake, or stung by a scorpion? People are people, and while context is important, we are breathing the same air as they and feeling the same soil beneath our feet. Did they worry about dwindling resources, attacks from unfriendly neighbors, disease, or fear brought on by some mysterious factors beyond their comprehension? Some things never change. Pottery shards and metates are much in evidence. One report suggested that the materials used to make the pottery was not local, but came from the Salt River Valley, suggesting trade relations with the Hohokam. While we can't know much regarding the specifics of what they saw hundreds of years ago, we can take in the scene now, perhaps observing deer scampering across the mesa, or another group of hikers in search of adventure. In addition to some of the woody plants and cacti I've already mentioned, some herbaceous plants to look for when the weather warms up include globe mallow, covina grass, monkey flower, golden corydalis, trans pecos morning glory, and many more. Baby Canyon Pueblo is monitored by a site steward, reminding visitors to take nothing but pictures and leave nothing but footprints in order for future visitors to enjoy the same experience as we might enjoy today. Returning to the Agua Fria River channel via the Mesa top instead of Baby Canyon, we cross under the power lines seen from Baby Canyon Pueblo and pick up a jeep road which provides an initial descent route toward the main stream channel. The path is quite rocky, but the switchbacks afford a much more reasonable way down the side of the canyon. Circling back west toward Badger Springs Wash and our starting point, you should notice saguaro cacti for the first time, indicating we are entering the Sonoran Desert. This ecological transition signals a change in climate as well as vegetation, some of which is newly introduced, like the invasive weed salt cedar. Check the rock walls lining the channel above the high water line. In spring, bright red clumps of red claret cup hedgehog may reveal their presence. The many tracks observed in the sand are from the livestock currently grazing here. When water levels rise, hiking may become tricky at best and hazardous at worst. But that also fosters greater success for native fish, such as the long fin dace. Approaching the confluence of Badger Springs Wash, you may observe another jeep road on the south side of the Agua Fria River, providing easier access to the south, Joe's Hill, along with many more pueblos and forts. At the confluence of Badger Springs Wash, we find another well-preserved set of petroglyphs. Hiking up Badger Springs Wash, we conclude our loop hike. The path is sandy and relatively level. Evidence of a fire will be seen on the left. Hiking north, you should note the distinctions between the east and west facing slopes lining the channel. Temperature and moisture are the primary factors in these distinctions, influencing what plants and animals can become established. Thanks for joining us for today's TEDS Talks and Walks. The Agua Fria National Monument is accessible, conveniently located, and rich in cultural and natural treasures.